Good morning. I'd like to give an update on my last trip in the US, where I spent some time in Washington and I attended a couple of meetings outside the IMF gatherings, and then in New York, where I had the opportunity of meeting some of the largest banks and investors in the world. 3 key points in my mind. The first one is the US banking crisis is now contained. It will have an impact on regionals and small cap banks, but fundamentally there is no more deposit panic. The key beneficiary of the large US institution, where we've been investing over the last couple of years, retaining zero exposure to the regional sector because it was an obvious trouble sector of the economy. Secondly, I think rates are ballpark arrived, in particular in the United States, and the reason is because the regional sector accounts for 40% of lending to the US economy. It's now under stress, needs to restructure, and as a result, credit availability is not as abundant as it used to be. As a result, not just price effects will slow the economy, but most importantly, inflation, but also the quantity and availability of credit. It's now becoming the key bottleneck for monetary transmission. That means expectation of inflation, in my view, are going to come down fast. How do we come out of this? I think if you stand back over the last 10 years, zero rates had a massive impact on the global real estate sector. Plenty of global investors, institutional investors piled in real estate and basically added leverage to every level of the real estate sector. Remember, real estate is 3 to 4 times global GDP. It's, the value of real estate globally is 3 times the stock market. So as an asset class, it's the number 1 asset class in the world. And typically has been held mainly by individuals, but not by institutional investors to the level which has been recently. So what we think is going to happen is, in particularly in residential, in multifamily offices in America, they increase rents to a level that is unaffordable now for most people. And a good part of the explosion in prices is, you can't have a nurse or a teacher or a policeman living in New York or Los Angeles and San Francisco. They need to commute 2 hours, and as a result, they ain't gonna go to work. And this is creating inflation on inflation simply because of massive scarcity. So we think eventually prices will have to come down. Equity investors that joined the party in the last 3-4 years on leverage are probably gonna take a significant loss, and there's gonna be a clear reset in rates expectation, in yield required by investor, and at the same time, there'll be lots of wealth that will be redistributed between borrowers and equity owners over the next 3 to 5 years. From a banking sector perspective, the average loan to value is less than 50%, and hence the losses are not going to be on the bank's balance sheet, but they're going to be on those that provide the equity and the mezzanine check. These are alternative lenders, these are global investors, these are private equity owners, these are sovereign wealth funds. But the banks, as you know, could not lend more than 50% loan to value, and hence the losses ain't going to be on banks' balance sheet. They're mainly concentrated in the regional bank sector, where up to 20-30% of exposure or balance sheet is in commercial real estate. Large caps in America, 7 to 8%, European banks less than 2%. Last point, it's now clear that the SVB debacle and the Credit Suisse debacle were clear single name events, mismanagement, nothing to do with a systemic wide impact. And in particular, Europe looks safer, stronger, because haven't had any of this bubble. Didn't have a commercial real estate bubble, didn't have a real estate bubble, didn't have a deposit bubble, didn't have a tech bubble. And so I think Europe is a safe place to be these days. Last point, as rates we think have peaked, so we're talking about maximum plus 50 bips in Europe and in the US, we think it's a great time to invest in safe fixed income with good names, with yields, between 9 to 10, 11% in US dollars, and basically the same in Europe, around 7 to 9. And the reason, because you can earn a safe carry for the next 3-4 years, wait for the bubble basically to come back, and at the same time rates to do their curves by limiting inflation and growth, and eventually we'll have an adjustment in asset prices, which what has always happened in history.